Hey gang, I'm Mr. Diamond. I'm one of the science teachers here at Weld Central High School. I understand that a lot of you are starting in on your science fair projects, but you're having trouble writing a testable question. I understand that because that can probably be the hardest part of the whole science fair is coming up with a good question. So I did this little video to help you out and see if you can come up with a good question. All right. Sometimes scientists just like to explore. Go out, check out what's happening around you, see what's happening. Like one of the major questions in my life is I never understand why a fly never lands in butter. Have you ever noticed that? I've never seen one ever do it. So it sure would be interesting to know if that's true. I mean, just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but it's a good question in my mind, and it just happens in my natural world. I'm sure you have questions in your life like that, that you've seen something happen around it, but you don't know the answer to it. That's a good place to start. We like to make observations as scientists. We observe things, we become curious about questions. Like I say, why do flies never land in butter? I'm very curious about this. I don't know why that happens. All right, to answer the questions, scientists come up with investigations and they use the scientific method to help them solve and answer these questions. That's really what it comes down to. They don't go to a teacher or look in a book. They try to come up with an answer on their own. That's what science is all about, is answering your questions. All right, let's look at the scientific method real quick. First thing is we have to ask a question. Why do flies never land in butter? I don't know why. But the big thing about that is that question has to be testable. If we don't test that question, it's really hard if there's no way to test it. So this is a good one. Then we write a hypothesis. I'll let your teachers help you with that. That's a little different, but it helps at the next step in our scientific method. And then we have to come up with an experiment to test our hypothesis. So this all starts from a very good question. And in your hypothesis, you need to have independent and dependent variables as well as controls. And then we come up with conclusions, which helps us either answer our question or not answer our question. Sometimes we don't get an answer, but that's okay if you don't get the right answer that you were hoping for. That just means you're one step closer to the right answer. So you have to start over. That's what's so cool about science, is even if you don't get the right answer, sometimes you're still right. All right, so what is a testable question? A testable question is one that can be answered by designing and conducting an experiment. That means we have to do an experiment to answer our question, okay? All right, testable questions are always changing one thing to see what happens to another thing. So we want to change things. For example, my fly question. Could I change the butter to see if the flies land in different types of butter? I don't know, but this is one question I could do. So I change one thing to see if another thing happens. Another example. Does changing the height of a ramp affect the speed of a car going down the ramp? Now, some of you may have played with this, but do you really know how fast they go? It seems like they go faster when they're higher, but I don't know. We have to check. All right, here's a good place to start. If you want to ask a testable question, you can write does changing something affect something? So, does changing the type of butter affect if flies land in it? Does changing the butter affect flies? If I change the type of butter I use, will it affect flies landing on it? I don't know. Has anybody else seen that? Flies land in butter? I've never seen it. All right, but the thing of it is we have to be able to use two different variables, and we want to be able to change those. All right, a variable is something that can be changed. We have independent variables, we have dependent variables. And what it is an independent variable is usually the one that's changed to see what happens to the dependent variable. Okay, so we change one thing to see something else happen. If I change the butter, do flies change? That's what we're looking at. We only want to change one thing at a time, not more than one because you can't tell. All right, what is an independent variable? That's a variable that will be changed by you, the scientist. A good experiment has only one independent variable. And what is a dependent variable? The variable is being measured in your experiment. So what are you looking at? What are we wanting to see changed? That's the second part of the question. And the response to the change. Is there any change? Maybe there isn't at all to the independent variable. We don't know. No change sometimes is the answer. All right, so here it is in our question. Does changing independent variable affect the dependent variable? How does changing the independent variable affect the dependent variable? If I change independent variables, will it affect the dependent variables? Okay, I think you kind of get the hang here, hopefully. All right, let's put it into our question again. Does changing the height of the ramp affect the speed of the car going down the ramp? That's our question. Where would I find that independent variable in this? So let's see if I highlight it. Does changing the height of the ramp affect the speed of the car going down the ramp? You can see how that fits, right? And it's nice and highlighted. So what about the dependent variable? Does changing the height of the ramp affect the speed of the car going down the ramp? Where would you think that's at? Let's highlight it. Does changing the height of the ramp affect the speed of the car going down the ramp? That's the dependent. So we change the height to see what happens to the speed. Changing one thing, right? That's our independent. Our dependent is what happens when we change it. All right, guys. So I'm Mr. Diamond. I'm at the high school. And if you have any questions about asking good testable questions, have your teachers email me, or you can email me. But look, I've got my email address wrong. It's D-I-A-M-O-N-D. I spell it just, this is spelled correctly. I switched the M and the A. I don't know. Maybe we could do a question on that as to why I did it. And if anybody ever comes up with that answer on that fly landing in butter, I sure would like to know the answer. All right. Thanks. I'll talk to you later.